It has been a while since some people have been talking about ancient predictions involving Pope Francis. These prophecies, which have circulated for years, suggest that something significant is about to happen to the leader of the Catholic Church. And now, with the recent news that he is hospitalized and facing health issues, many people have started to wonder if these visions from the past are finally becoming reality. It is a topic that stirs the curiosity of many, especially since it involves someone so important in the religious world. Pope Francis, who has always been seen as a strong and charismatic figure, now appears more fragile due to age and the conditions that have landed him in the hospital. This has caught many people by surprise because, although he has had some health issues before, no one expected anything that would draw such attention. His hospitalization has brought these ancient predictions to light, which speak of a moment of crisis or transformation linked to his papacy, and people have not wasted any time connecting the dots. Many of these prophecies come from religious texts or interpretations made by scholars over the centuries. They are not exactly clear, but some mention a pope who would face difficult times, perhaps even the end of an era. With Pope Francis in the hospital, the more curious are looking at these writings and trying to understand if what is happening now aligns with what was said so long ago. It is almost like a puzzle that is starting to make sense for some. This is not the first time Pope Francis has startled us due to health issues. He has undergone surgeries and had moments when he needed to slow down. But this time, with him hospitalized again, the situation seems more serious. This only fuels discussions about these ancient predictions, as they speak of a period of instability or significant change. And when you combine this with his figure, which is so well known, around the world it becomes hard not to pay attention. What makes this story even more interesting is how it mixes faith, mystery, and everyday events. Some people firmly believe that these prophecies are coming true, while others think it's just coincidence. The fact is that Pope Francis, even as he gets older and faces these problems, remains the center of attention. His health quickly becomes news, and with that, speculations about what lies ahead only grow. For now, what we know is that he is in the hospital, being cared for by doctors. The details about his condition are not always disclosed clearly, leaving room for more questions. Is this just another chapter in the life of a man who has faced so much? Or is there something greater behind all of this? The prophecies do not give an exact answer, but they certainly spark people's imaginations. While the doctors do their job, the world is watching what is happening in Rome. Pope Francis is already a figure that divides opinions, with some loving his simple approach and others criticizing some of his choices. Now with this hospitalization, the focus is entirely on his health and what this might mean, both for the church and for the people who follow these stories of ancient prophecies. It is a moment that leaves everyone thinking. The interesting thing is that, regardless of whether you believe in these predictions or not, Pope Francis' current situation is already enough to generate a lot of conversation. He is there battling these health issues, and the rest of the world is trying to understand what this represents. These prophecies that are on everyone's lips are not new. They come from very ancient times, some even from centuries ago, and were written by figures that many consider to have a special connection with the divine. A famous example is Saint Malachy, a 12th century bishop who allegedly left a list of popes, each with a brief description. According to those who believe, in this Pope Francis would be the last on that list, referred to as Peter the Roman. And guess what? Some say that his time in the hospital is a sign of this, but it is not just Saint Malachy that enters this story. Other predictions, such as those of Nostradamus, are also thrown into the mix. This guy, who lived in the 16th century, wrote a bunch of mysterious verses that people still try to decipher today. Some of his fans swear that certain lines refer to a religious leader facing hard times, with the world in anticipation. For this group, Pope Francis's hospitalization is like a piece fitting into this giant puzzle. The interesting thing is that these prophecies do not only speak of illness or an end. Often they suggest a transformation, something that will profoundly change things. In Pope Francis' case, some believe he is living through a moment that will mark the history of the Church. He is already known for being different, with more open ideas and a simple way that not everyone in the Catholic hierarchy appreciates. So his health becomes a trigger for these interpretations. Now imagine the following. A man who came from afar, from Argentina, to lead millions of faithful, facing challenges that no one expected. The ancient prophecies do not name him, of course, but the details they provide make many people think. They speak of a pope who would govern amid difficulties, perhaps even with the world in crisis, and with everything happening today, from pandemics to conflicts. It is easy to see why people are connecting these ideas. Pope Francis has had to deal with a lot since he took office in 2013. He has faced scandals in the church, criticism from all sides, and has tried to bring a fresh air to an institution that is full of traditions. But now, with him older and in the hospital, the body seems to be paying the price. This doesn't go unnoticed by those who follow these predictions, as they often point to a leader who will go to the limit. One thing that stands out is how these ancient stories continue to resonate with us today. Even though they come from a very different time, they have a way of seeming current. The Pope in the hospital with the world watching is the kind of image that makes you stop and think, did someone back then really see this coming? There's no way to prove it, but you also can't ignore how much these ideas affect people's minds. Meanwhile, the doctors continue to care for him, and the news trickles out slowly. The church tries to convey calm, saying it's just another moment of care for the Pope's health. But for those who believe in prophecies, every detail matters. One day he's fine, the next he's hospitalized again, and this becomes fuel for those who see signs in everything. It's a mix of reality and mystery that keeps growing. In the end, what's happening with Pope Francis is a goldmine for those who like to think about the future, whether it's due to faith, curiosity, or just wanting to understand what's coming next. These ancient prophecies are more alive than ever. In the next part, I'll tell you more about what they say regarding what might happen after all of this. For now, what we have is a man fighting to get better and a lot of people trying to guess the next chapter. What makes these prophecies even more intriguing is the way they talk about a time of great changes. It's not just about Pope Francis being sick or hospitalized, but about what this could mean for the world. Some predictions suggest that the end of his papacy would be the beginning of something different, perhaps a turning point for the church, or even an event that goes beyond religion. And with him in the hospital, this idea gains strength for those who are watching. Just think, Pope Francis is already a guy who has broken several traditions. He was the first Jesuit pope, the first from Latin America, and has always had a more down-to-earth style, different from others who came before him. So, for those who believe in prophecies, his weakened health could be a sign that his time is closing. And with that, something new is on the way. It's as if he were a bridge between the old and what is to come. There's a part of the predictions that speaks of chaos or confusion after an important pope. In the case of Saint Malachy, for example, this list ends with Peter the Roman, and, after that, things get a bit murky. Some say it would be the end of the church as we know it. Others think it's just a transformation, like a new beginning. With Pope Francis facing these issues now, people's imaginations run wild trying to predict the next step. And it's not just the church that is part of this conversation. The world is experiencing a strange moment, with crises in various corners, climate changes, and a feeling that things are somewhat out of place. For those who see signs in the prophecies, the Pope's hospitalization is just another piece that fits into this larger picture. They look at all of this and think, is everything connected? Is this the moment those ancient texts were pointing to? While he is there in the hospital, the day-to-day activities of the church continue. The cardinals and bishops carry on with their duties, but you can feel that the atmosphere is different. Pope Francis has always been the heart of this enormous machine, with his way of speaking directly to people. But now, with him needing care, there's a void that no one quite knows how to fill. And this only fuels more theories about what comes next. One thing that the prophecies have in common is this vibe of uncertainty. They don't lay everything out neatly, like a manual for the future. They're more like clues that everyone interprets in their own way. That's why the current situation of the Pope makes so many people reflect. Some see him as the last of an era, others as someone who will open doors to something unexpected. What no one disputes is that his time in the hospital is stirring thoughts for many. Outside the Vatican, ordinary people are also keeping an eye on things. Some pray for him to get better soon, others are just curious about what will happen. But the fact is that Pope Francis's health has become a topic that crosses borders. And for the prophecies, this is gold, an event that everyone sees that stirs emotions and leaves many questions hanging in the air. It's the kind of thing they love to use to create suspense. For now, all that's left is to wait. The doctors will update his condition, the church will try to keep things on track, and the rest of the world will wonder what lies behind all of this. The prophecies don't give dates or times, but they plant this seed that something big is coming. Now let's imagine what these prophecies suggest for the future, if this moment of Pope Francis in the hospital is indeed a landmark. Some of them speak of a period of turbulence after this special pope steps down. It's not exactly about the end of the world, but about a strong shakeup, something that will make things change places. And with him facing these health issues, some are already trying to guess how all of this will unfold. One of the strongest ideas is that the church may face a time of division. Pope Francis has always been a figure who generates love and hate. There are those who love his way of speaking about the poor and taking care of the planet, but there are others who think he's gone too far with the changes. If he stays in the hospital longer or needs to step back, it could be that these differences within the church become even clearer, almost like a fight to decide the direction of things. Additionally, some prophecies point to a new leader who will emerge after this moment. They don't say who, of course, but they mention someone who will have to deal with a very messy world. If Pope Francis is indeed the last on St. Malachi's list, for example, the next pope would have a different role, almost like a guide to navigate through a storm. And with the way things are going, one can imagine that this next chapter won't be easy. Outside of religion, the predictions also touch on larger issues. Some mix the fate of the church with that of the whole world. Speaking of crises that will test everyone, we already see signs of this out there, with economic problems, wars, and the planet showing signs of fatigue. For those who believe, Pope Francis's hospitalization is not just an isolated piece of news, but a part of a puzzle that is slowly coming together, with everything happening in its own time. And just look at how curious the timing of it all is. Pope Francis has been in charge for over 10 years, and during that time he has seen a bit of everything. Now with him older and facing health issues, it seems that the cycle is closing. Prophecies love this kind of coincidence because they thrive on symbols and moments that seem to have a greater meaning. It's as if everything has been prepared to arrive at where it is now. Meanwhile, the Vatican tries to keep calm. They say that the Pope is being well cared for, that there's no need for anyone to panic. But for those who follow these ancient stories, every day he spends in the hospital is another reason to keep an eye on things. They wonder what comes next. Will it be a time of renewal, as some hope, or something heavier, as others fear? The prophecies don't answer directly, but leave us thinking. The craziest thing is that even with so much uncertainty, these predictions have a powerful way of affecting us. They take something simple, like a sick pope, and turn it into a giant story, full of possibilities. And Pope Francis, whether he likes it or not, has become the protagonist of it all. His health is the thread pulling these ideas out of books and into people's daily lives. And what we have now is a bunch of questions. If these prophecies are right, what will happen when Pope Francis is no longer in charge? Will the church reinvent itself or face a major blow? And what about the world in all of this? If the prophecies are pointing in the right direction, what comes after Pope Francis could be a turning point. Some of them speak of a time when everything will be tested, as if it were a trial for the church and for the people who believe in it. It's not just about who will sit in the Pope's chair next, but about what this next leader will encounter ahead. With Francis in the hospital, this after seems closer than ever. One of the most famous predictions, that of St. Malachi, ends with this so-called Peter the Roman, who would be the last pope on the list. It is said that he will govern amid great confusion, with the church facing a period of destruction or renewal. It depends on how you read it. If Pope Francis is indeed the end of this line, the next guy would have to deal with something that no one has seen before. Perhaps a crisis so large that it changes everything we know. Besides that, there are other visions that speak of signs, in the sky or on the earth, like events that everyone will notice. It's not hard to imagine people looking at the strange weather, natural disasters, or even world politics and thinking that everything aligns with what was written centuries ago. Pope Francis's hospitalization for these people is just the beginning, a warning that things are going to heat up, and not in a good way. The curious thing is that these prophecies are not just about tragedy. Some of them have a side of hope, as if this difficult time could pave the way for something better. It could be that the church goes through a thorough cleaning, leaving behind what no longer works and rebuilding itself in a new way. Pope Francis, with his style, has already planted some seeds for that, so perhaps what comes next is a continuation of what he started. While he is in the hospital, the world doesn't stop. News keeps coming out, sometimes saying he is better, sometimes leaving an air of concern. And every piece of information becomes another reason for those who believe in the prophecies to think about what is to come. They imagine a future where faith will be tested, but also where it can emerge stronger, or completely different from what it is today. Another thing that these predictions like to throw into the mix is the idea of a confrontation. They don't speak of war with weapons, but of a struggle between ideas, between the old and the new. Pope Francis has already faced this during his papacy, with criticism from those who want to keep everything as it has always been, and support from those who want change. If he steps aside, this fight could explode, deciding which way the church will lean. And there are ordinary people in all of this too. For those who don't care about the prophecies, the Pope's health is just sad news, a sign that even great leaders age. But for those who see meaning in ancient texts, each passing day is like a page turning, bringing us closer to what was predicted. It's a mix of reality with imagination that keeps this story alive. For now, what we know is that Pope Francis is fighting to get well, and the rest is speculation. But prophecies have this gift of transforming the present into a stage for the future. In the next part, I will tell you more about these signs that they say will appear, these things that might show if the plan is really unfolding as written. Prophecies love to talk about signs, things we can see or feel to confirm that the future is shaping up, as they say. With Pope Francis in the hospital, there are those who are already keeping an eye on everything, looking for clues in what is happening around. Some predictions mention strange events in the sky, like eclipses or storms out of season, while others speak of confusion among nations. And look, there are plenty of people who think they're already seeing this around. Just think, in recent years we've had a lot of unusual things. Storms that nobody can explain properly, heat waves breaking records, and even the way countries are fighting among themselves is different. For those who believe in prophecies, the health of Pope Francis is just another piece of this puzzle. They piece these elements together and say that everything is aligning, as if the world is sending a message that only a few understand. There's a part of these visions that speaks of a very clear sign within the church itself. It could be a big decision, something that affects the faithful, or even a crisis that forces everyone to choose a side. Pope Francis, even while being weaker now, has already changed a lot during his time, so it wouldn't be a surprise if the next step came from there. Maybe it's something that happens while he's hospitalized, or soon after. Another idea that comes up often is that of a purifying fire. It's not literal like a wildfire, but a metaphor for a moment when bad things are burned away to make room for the new. With the Pope facing these health issues, some see this as the beginning of that fire, a cleansing that will impact the church and perhaps even beyond. It's a heavy vision, but it also carries the hope of renewal. And we can't forget the people who are following all of this. While the doctors take care of the Pope, there are people praying, people speculating, and even those writing theories online. Prophecies thrive on this, on the energy of the people who believe in them. Each news item about his condition becomes fuel for these ideas, making them grow and spread faster than ever. The funny thing is that these signs don't have to be huge to grab attention. Sometimes it's just a coincidence that aligns with what's written, like the Pope being in the hospital in a year that someone finds significant because of an ancient text. For those who follow these predictions, That's already enough to say that the plan is in motion, that the future is knocking at the door. While Pope Francis continues to receive medical care, the Vatican tries to project an image of control. But for the more curious minds, each silence or vague statement is a sign in itself. They imagine that something is being hidden, or that the church leaders know more than they let on. It's this mystery that keeps the prophecies alive, fueling the idea that something big is just around the corner. Deep down, what these ancient visions want is for us to pay attention, whether it's a strange sky, an unexpected decision, or just the feeling that time is speeding up. They say the signs are there for anyone willing to see. In the next part, I'll tell you more about how people interpret all of this and what they expect to happen when the Pope is no longer at the center of the story. With Pope Francis in the hospital, the people who believe in these prophecies are working hard to understand what it all means. Each person has their own interpretation, of course, but what unites them is the certainty that his moment is special. Some think he is the last pope before a historic turning point, while others see him as a sign that the church will undergo a transformation that nobody can yet imagine. And look, opinions keep coming up. For many, his way of being is already a clue about what the prophecies spoke of. Pope Francis brought a fresh air with ideas that not everyone in the church liked, but that won millions around the world. Now with him weaker and hospitalized, there are those who say this is the end of a cycle, as if he came to prepare the ground for what comes next. It's an interpretation that mixes respect for him with the expectation of something greater. Others go further and believe that his departure, whether for health reasons or any other, will be the spark for chaos predicted for centuries. They look at the words of Saint Malachi or Nostradamus and imagine a world where the church loses power or where it has to fight to stay standing. For these people, the Pope's hospitalization is the beginning of this chapter, the sign that the clock is ticking towards something that nobody controls. But not everyone sees only the dark side. There's a group that interprets the prophecies in a lighter tone, thinking that the after Pope Francis will be a rebirth. They envision a simpler church, closer to the people as he has always advocated. For them, his weakened health is just a passage, a difficult moment that will open doors to something beautiful, like a new phase for faith. And how do people deal with all of this? Well, there's a mix. Some pray for his recovery, asking that the prophecies wait a little longer. Others are already keeping an eye on the next pope, trying to guess who it will be and how he will face what's to come. The fact is that the state of Pope Francis has become a mirror for what each person believes, reflecting hopes, fears, and a host of theories that keep circulating. Meanwhile, day by day, life goes on. The doctors do their work, the church tries to keep things in order, and the world keeps turning. But for those who live these prophecies, every news item is a piece of a larger story. They take what's happening now and fit it into ancient texts, as if they were detectives trying to solve a mystery that spans centuries. What's most impressive is how these ancient ideas manage to stay so current. The Pope in the hospital is not just a headline. It's a trigger for thousands of conversations, debates, and dreams about the future. Whether you're someone who believes or just a curious observer, you can feel that this moment carries a different weight, an energy that grabs everyone's attention. For now, all that's left is to wait and see what happens with him. The prophecies don't specify the day or hour, but they create this expectation that keeps everyone on their toes. In the next part, I will tell you how all of this might end, with some prompts for you to reflect with me on what's happening and what might still come. We have now reached the end, but our communion with God continues. If this message spoke to your heart, remember that everything happens according to the sovereign will of the Lord. He warns us, strengthens us, and calls us to a time of intercession. Now I ask you, what did you think of all this? What did God minister to your heart today? Share in the comments, as your experience can uplift others. And before you go, I want to extend a special invitation. Stay strong in faith, and don't miss the upcoming prayer videos here on the channel. Together we continue to seek understanding and spiritual discernment. And finally, let's unite in prayer for the health of Pope Francis, who is in the hospital. May God pour out strength, peace, and restoration upon him. If you believe in The power of prayer, write in the comments. Lord, bring healing and renewal. May the Lord bless you and see you at the next prayer.